In an era of big box grocery and consolidation in food retail, we still see small neighborhood food stores in some places. They become integral parts of some communities, offering a familiar face and personalized service. In this episode, we look at how one of these stores has carved out a space in a local market in Fergus, Ontario. My name is Mike Von Massow, and this is the Food Focus Podcast. My guest today is Jackie Fraser of Fraberts Fresh Foods. We talk about what works for them and how they differentiate in the market. She highlights building a relationship and establishing trust with customers. We also talk about some of the challenges of being a smaller player in a big market, economies of scale and access to distribution among them, which is helped by the Ontario Food Terminal. She also talks about the challenge of customer losses due to two bridge construction projects in a town divided by a river with only three bridges. Whoever expected to hear the words, "A pandemic saved my business," because bridges reopened and demand went up. Before we begin, I wanted to say thank you for listening. Our audience continues to grow. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you prefer to go for podcast subscriptions. Many episodes, including this one, are now available on YouTube if you prefer to watch rather than listen. If you are inclined, you can leave us a review, as reviews help others find the podcast and will help us continue to grow. I appreciate your support. Now let's get straight to my conversation with Jackie. Well, good morning, Jackie, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Jackie, tell me a little bit about Fraberts Fresh Foods. Like it's a business that I know. Full disclosure, I'm a customer, but tell us a little bit about what it is and what you do.
Yeah, we're a small family run grocery shop. We focus on local food, as you know, and fresh items. My husband's a chef, and business partner, so he makes ready made meals and soups, stews, lasagnas, curries in the back. So we have that available up front for customers. So it's something that they can just pick up, take home, and heat and eat. But along with that, a real claim to fame is our local produce, our local meat, dairy, some specialty items that are made locally, and that's really where we put our focus.
And so, uh, how long have you been around?
So we'll be celebrating 13 years in May, which is
Wow.
unbelievable. Yeah,
So that's remarkable in the times where we have sort of Walmart and Costco and these big sort of high volume, low price stores. What's the key to success for, as you say, a small family run business that's been around for 13 years?
yeah. So it's when we first moved to Fergus, we realized there was no farmers market at the time, and there was nothing. There were no sort of small shops, nowhere. I came from a market gardening area where there was always an abundance of local food available at a variety of markets. And my first question was, well, where do people buy their strawberries in June? Because I just do not buy strawberries at Zayre's or Walmart or anything like
Yeah.
that. So that's kind of where it all precipitated. I actually was working in sort of ag communications at the time and had gone on a conference. It was a farm writers tour, actually. We were just talking about journalism
Yeah.
to the county, Prince Edward County, and of course their taste trail was it was a real pioneer. They're real pioneers in Ontario with promoting local food, and I was really inspired by a lot of the entrepreneurs there. So came up with this sort of idea on the back of a napkin during one of the speakers that we could do something with Derek being a chef and my passion for local food. I should back up a bit. When I was growing up in this market garden area, I worked at a at a variety of those markets. I grew up at a dairy farm, so getting up at 4:30 in the morning to milk cows, I thought, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a
Yeah.
job at the market garden down the way. And then next thing I knew, I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go down to the food terminal to buy produce. So that whole
Yeah.
plan backfired. But I really fell in love. I fell in love with the food terminal for one thing. I'm not sure how many of your listeners have talked about that. But we can talk about that a bit later. It's a place where all the produce that comes in for independent grocers, and it's its own little planet in and of itself. Anyhow, backtracking, we came up with this business plan, thought we could offer something local food, ready-made meals, and thought there was probably a market for that. Now we knew in Fergus, yes, we have a Walmart, we have a Zayre's, it was a Price Chopper at the time. Now it's a Freshco. So I mean, we weren't without competition for that kind of thing. But what we wanted to do was provide a different experience. So with me being the farm girl, I could tell customers how the food got to the store. And with Derek being the chef, he could tell them what to do with the food once it left the store. And I always joke, don't get us mixed up, because Derek grew up in Timmins and knows nothing about agriculture. And I married a chef for a reason. I've got no business in the kitchen. So we really try to sort of, you're not just coming to get your groceries, you're coming to get information as well. So we try to differentiate ourselves a little bit that
Yeah. So that makes a ton of sense, and it's also what I'm familiar with. Um, but we also have a significant part of the year that we don't have local produce,
way. Yes.
and you guys have thrived even in that environment. And I'm guessing part of that is those pre-made meals, but it's also having fresh stuff, even if it's not local stuff.
Exactly, and that's it is a slower time for us in the winter because we don't have that same edge that we do with the local produce. But what I do is I try to make sure that I'm bringing in just a little bit better than average produce. I'm bringing in nicer romaine lettuce, nicer green beans, some of those key things that sometimes are a little flimsy in the off season in the
Yeah.
big chains. So yeah, trying to offer a little bit of that just extra quality. I always talk about we're more like a farm market than a fine food market. There's a bit of a fine line there. Um, we Our customers are very diverse, so we have everything from sort of the environmentally socially conscious, sort of higher average income folks to older clientele that just like the ready-made meals, for example, to people that just live downtown and find it convenient. So um, if we were in sort of a bigger center, we could maybe be a little fancier, but we try to stay a little true to our roots. It's being a Fergus and not getting a little too sort of ahead of ourselves. But offering things that they can't get at those chains. So we have a full service deli where we slice meat to order instead of the prepackaged kind of slimy stuff, and having nice sandwiches and pizzas to go. So always finding little ways to differentiate to complement when we don't have the local produce, and we have local meat year round. So that's one thing we kind of always forget about. That obviously there's seasonality with produce, but when it comes to dairy and meat products, that's 12 months a year. So
Yeah, and you do have local dairy. I've seen Sheldon Creek Dairy,
yeah.
and we had Emily on
Oh, great.
an earlier episode of the
Yeah.
podcast. I know you also have 1847 flour,
Hmm.
or 1845, sorry, which
Yeah. No,
is
1847. You had it right.
1847. I was right
Yeah.
the first time. Yeah. And I've also had a conversation with Melissa because I discovered her flour early in the
Yeah.
pandemic. Cheryl, my wife, bought it from you.
Yes.
And because I've become a bread baker during the pandemic. So you do have those, those local products that aren't as seasonal. I'm the other thing, and shameless promotion when that's fine, is that local deli where you can get stuff sliced. I have to be low sodium. I get custom sausage made where I can still eat good sausage, and my wife can not give me too hard a time for the amount of sodium I'm taking in. So that sort of that degree of individualization and customization, I think, is probably a key too.
Absolutely. And customer service and being able to serve customers individually has been huge. Some of we recently, he's almost been with us for a year now. We hired a store manager who started with us March 18th, which, when we get talking about the
Yeah.
pandemic, that really became significant. Poor guy, he came from Food Basics. So at least had come, he'd seen sort of the beginning of this insanity happening, but came over to us and he's in awe because, of course, he came from big grocery. He goes, I can't believe how you cater to individual needs of customers. How you And I said, well, that's what we're all about. I know that doesn't happen in those big stores, and it can't because it's a different scale. But that's what sets us above those larger chains, is that we can do that. That we're able to do the one-on-one and individual things, and that's what we love doing. That's Derek and I are both real people. We like to help and have those relationships for sure.
Well, yeah, and you can walk in and ask a question and ask where this is from or ask how to use this, and you can get an answer.
Exactly. It comes
One
back to that, we sell more than just commodities, we sell information. and trust is huge. I have to talk about that element because I think that's become a huge factor in our success, both before the pandemic and after. People, I often get asked questions about organics or GMOs and that kind of thing, and coming from the backgrounds, in ag communications, where I was having to communicate those sort of complex issues to the masses, being able to have those one-on-one conversations with customers is amazing. So they'll come in saying, "Well, why isn't everything in organic?" And I'll talk about, I buy my spinach from Paul Collins, and I get my tomatoes from Fleur Lane, and I talk about their production systems and our relationships. And you find that they're kind of glazing over because I always go too far, and they're like, "Well, that's kind of what I meant." And you realize that a lot of people aren't necessarily looking for labels or whatnot. They just want trust. They want to know, okay, if you're feeding this stuff to your family, then I'll feed it to mine. And it's so building those relationships and building that trust has been huge.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about all the time is how little people understand about where their food comes from. So they look and latch on to these individual terms that give them confidence. And as we have a conversation with people to say, this is how food is produced, and this is where your food comes from, and this is why they do these things that they do, people start to say, okay, I'm okay. I understand that. I'm okay with that, and I get why we're doing that. And I think that I've always argued that restaurants can do that because they're having an individual conversation with you at the table, but grocery stores can't. And really, you bring that kind of restaurant experience where you can tell people where it's from and how it's produced to that retail context.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a key to our success. Is being able to have those one-on-one conversations for sure.
So what are some of the challenges of being a smaller player in the marketplace?
Well, obviously, economies of scale. You just don't have the economies of scale that the big guys do. We don't have access to products at lower prices that they do. So there's all of those very real challenges. Um, and we just in the early days, like I used to try to be a little bit cognizant. I'd make a trip to Zares every now and then and look at pricing, and I thought, you know what, we need to set our prices where, where we can be profitable. And if we can't be profitable on a certain item, then we just can't sell it. So you
Yeah.
come to terms with those kinds of things quickly. We do get customers ask, well, why don't you sell cereal? Why don't you sell like certain items that they don't want to go elsewhere to get? And like, because it's just not no point. Now, having said that, in the pandemic, we expanded our product line huge. We're carrying all kinds of things that we did not sell before the pandemic, and it was largely to be that one-stop shop because customers were coming to us because they trusted us. They felt safe in our store, and we wanted to be able to help them get some other things. So we brought in sort of some run-of-the-line milk, and we're selling Wellington County garbage bags of all
Yeah.
things. So just that we did bring some of those things in just to be helpful, and if they move quickly and don't take up too much time or space, then it's okay to have those things on the shelf just to help out our
Yeah, and,
customers.
and that's exactly right. The criteria is the fact that it moves, that it turns,
Yeah,
because you have to get return per square foot of shelf space, and
that's
if
right. If
something
I have to
sells,
dust it,
you'll sell
I'm
it.
never selling it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
So
right.
you raised the point. Well, you raised a couple of points. You raised the point about not having access to the big distribution, those economies of scale, and you also talked about the food terminal, which I think is one of the coolest places on the earth.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I usually take I teach a supply chain management course, and I usually take that class to the food terminal and to the Gordon Food Service facility in Milton and show them the differences in
Yes.
distribution and in systems. And the food terminal is really cool. Do you still buy at the food terminal?
I do. So I go about twice a week in the summer, and in the winter, I'm able to go kind of every other week. I am able to get delivery from some of the food terminal houses, from Gamble specifically. So fresh lettuces and things I have to get weekly, I get that delivery. In fact, I get that delivery twice a week now. But I still like to go down every other week to get my Ontario apples, my carrots, all sort of the hardy stuff that I can get in the farmers market. And the food terminal is awesome because it is the reason why independent grocers can actually compete for produce because it is a one-stop shop. You can go down there. You're getting the wholesale pricing on produce that the big guys are getting, and it's it without the food terminal. you would lose a lot of independent grocers because we just that is our one opportunity to compete on a level playing field with the big guys.
So just to give people a sense, the food terminal is literally this huge building with, I forget, maybe 10 or 12 permanent vendors, and then
Yeah,
outside, undercover, uh, a large area where local farmers can come and sell product. And you can walk around. It opens, as you said, at 5 in the morning, and you can walk through, and restaurants go there too, and
yeah,
negotiate prices, pick exactly what you want, find the products you like. And buy something that you know is local because that farmer drove it down
yeah.
from wherever they are that morning.
Absolutely. It's a 40-acre site in Etobicoke. And yeah, the number's about right. There's about 20 indoor vendors and that's where you can get both local and imported products. So I can get my lemons at the same time as I'm getting maybe my Ontario strawberries outside. And I think you say about 300 farmers stalls in the outdoor market. And it's a wild and crazy place. Tow motors and people driving around and negotiating and lots of different languages and colorful language.
Yeah.
And but it's and buying produce is a very visual experience. You can go down there and pick out what you want, get the quality you want. So it's a real key to our local food system for sure.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is in an era where I don't carry cash at all anymore because I'm tapping everything. No one wants cash.
Yeah,
It is a cash place.
absolutely.
And
I,
and
I
and as you
joke
say,
with
there's negotiations and prices change depending on demand. Like it is economics 101 in action. It really
absolutely.
is.
It totally is. Economics 101. Yeah, it's the wild west of and just yeah, it's economics at its core. It's supply and demand and yeah, the cash. I mean, and it's one of those strange places. I'll walk around with $5,000 in cash in my pocket, and there's some interesting characters down there, and I don't feel remotely unsafe. I wouldn't walk around with $200 anywhere else in my
Yeah,
pocket. But I'll have 5 grand in my pocket wandering around there. And in January you have to leave your van running and keep the heat on so that stuff doesn't freeze as it's getting
yeah.
delivered. So you're leaving your $60,000 van running, walk around 5 grand in your pocket. Yeah, it's all good.
No, everyone understands the rules, and like you say, there are some colorful characters. Before we move on from the terminal, one of the things, and of course, middle-aged white guy didn't recognize this, but a couple of my students, female students, noticed it is a male-dominated place.
Oh
It
yes,
is testosterone heavy. Do you notice do you notice that when you're shopping there, or are you just uh,
I I do. I know you notice it. It's obvious. There's the only like you say the very few females that are down there are the cashiers in the bigger houses. There's maybe about five of us female buyers down there, out of hundreds. So yeah, it's the last bastion of male dominance. And I used to work in the sand and gravel business. I've worked in some really male dominated industries, but that is nothing takes the cake like the food terminal. And I always kind of wonder why that is. Like, why? I don't know. I don't know whether it's because of the hours and again the typical. It's hard for women to like all those guys get to come home after they work there at some ungodly hour and they have a nap in the afternoon and then they get
yeah,
on with their lives. Well, women can't do that.
yeah.
So yeah, it is. But that is an interesting observation. It's very
Do
real.
do you do you think you get treated differently as a woman, as a female buyer?
And I was going to mention that I think I've worked it to my advantage.
Oh, that's
People
interesting.
get to know you right away. I mean, you stand out because you're
Yeah,
female, and so you get to build relationships maybe quicker. But I'm treated very well down there, and I don't that's okay with me.
yeah, that's good.
there's,
So
there's the
so
chivalry is not dead down there. It's
yeah,
okay.
that's that's good. And it's interesting because as you say, you walk around there and there are some interesting guys,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a system that works really well.
yeah.
I'd be missing the boat if I didn't acknowledge that the last year has been a strange one. And you alluded to it a little bit that you've sort of expanded your offering so you could be that one-stop shop for people can feel comfortable coming in. Um, I've been impressed when I've been in with the protocols and those sorts of things. How has COVID changed your business?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So we, as you know, went through a couple of challenges with our business in our first 12 years. Being in a downtown core with that's on a river with two bridges, we didn't have to go through one but two bridge replacement projects,
Yeah.
which were devastating to our business. It's amazing how construction can really destroy a retail business. So in 2013, we went through one bridge construction. 5 years later, in 2018, another one. So we were still kind of recovering from that second bridge. And when news of the pandemic came out, I remember I actually called my mom. I was in tears. I thought, this is it. This will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I've seen the lineups at Costco, and I'm like, they're not going to come to us. This is it. We're done. We just hired this poor fella as a store manager, and oh
Yeah.
no, what business fails. What he's left a secure job. Like it was, and then all of a sudden, March 13th and onward throughout that weekend, we're like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? The lineups, the shelves were being emptied out. I thought, okay, wait a minute. And yeah, so our store manager started there on the 18th, and we just pivoted and started stocking and adding different things and racing down to the terminal to get more product and trying to and thinking, what is happening here? So as you know, at the beginning days, it was the ground beef, carrots, potatoes. Everybody was stocking up on their staples, and so we were just rushing to try and keep up with that. Then it was bacon, eggs, yogurt, all the breakfast foods. Because bananas, oh my god, I could keep bananas on the shelf because all of a sudden everybody's eating breakfast at home because they're
Yeah.
working. Then, of course, the pandemic baking started. So it was flour and yeast. And so, we just ratcheting up. Easter was looming, and we thought, oh, it'll be a bust because nobody's getting together with family. But people were, they still wanted small turkeys, they wanted lamb, they wanted ham. People still wanted to do something. And on one day, we were launching our curbside. So, okay, we were already with a third party delivery agent, thank goodness, Mrs. Grocery. So that that part we went from a handful of orders a week to like dozens a day, so that we were ready to take that on. But then we realized we needed a curbside program, and people were phoning in their orders. One day the phone was off the hook for, I don't know, 10 minutes, and there was 27 messages. And by the time I listened to those 27 messages, there were seven more messages on it, and it was just, we had PTSD from the phone ringing.
Yeah.
Just every time it rang, we were like, ugh. And trying to take people's orders on the phone, and then they're like, I don't know, Gus, do we have any milk in the fridge? Can you check? And then they can't find their Visa card. Can you go get my purse? And oh, I need my glasses. I can't read the number. And oh, we can't do curbside orders like this. So we just created a or an email address, curbside@frabertsfreshfood.com. Please just email your list to us, and we'll look after it. And eventually, over time, we created kind of an online shop for curbside. But that took some time. But at the end of the day, that fiscal year, we were 75% over the year before. Like we
Wow.
almost doubled our sales. It was insane. And so far for this year, January, February, we are 100% over last January and February. So it's just been unbelievable. I say I'm going to write a book, how a pandemic saved my business.
Yeah.
When this is over, I tell people food and plexiglass, that's kind of the only businesses you want to be in right now. But it's been phenomenal. And it's been quite good for us,
Yeah.
to be very honest.
Yeah, and
We
it's interesting because you've developed that relationship. As people feel comfortable, I would expect that people will stay with you.
Yes, and that's obviously what we're hoping for, that they'll continue with us. I There was a webinar I was part of about 6 or 8 months ago with the Independent Grocers Federation of Independent Grocers, and they had a stat that 1 in 4 Canadians changed where they went grocery shopping based on safety and where they felt safe. So they were flocking to stores like ours where they just had that a little bit more trust. There's a little bit more space. They just felt a little safer. So yeah, hopefully we can hold on to some of that.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because we had a research project on right as the pandemic started and had to pivot. We were doing food waste work. We finished our audits on the Friday, and lockdown happened on the Sunday. So then, doing an intervention and seeing the change, we looked at food waste after the pandemic. But we also interviewed people in about in about August, to ask them how their shopping behavior had changed, and we saw a real spike in the online orders. But then people said, once I felt safe going back, I went back to the store, because people still like that visceral feel. I mean, you say buying produce is a visual thing. Well, I think it is a visual thing for people buying it for their households too.
Absolutely. And the grocery industry, we're miles behind other retail as far as online goes. People, have online has taken over very many retail categories, but grocery's still kind of that last place where people. Yeah, it is. It's a visual thing, and for us, we went from our online sales are still less than 5% of our sales, but they went from 0% to less than 5%. But no, we we're the kind of shop we want people to come in. That's our
That's where
whole.
you add value.
That's where we add value, exactly. Like it's we're not meant to be Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. I learned a lot today. Thank you for taking the time. Before we wrap up, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was eager to talk about kind of trust and all that and how that's helps with our business and the impacts of COVID. Um, no, I think we really covered all the ground. I One thing that I have found really makes us feel great through this whole experience is we get customers at least once a day, if not more, thanking us and actually saying, you know what, you've helped me get through this pandemic. This is the most normal thing I do every week. This is, thank you for giving me a safe place to shop. And customers have noticed. Thank you for expanding what you've offered to keep me safe and allow me to shop here. So that's been really touching. And I think if as a society we get anything out of this whole experience is that sense of community. And I really do feel that over the last year. We really felt that love for community and that want for connection and that kind of thing. So here's hoping that continues on.
Yeah. Hopefully, as we come out, things continue to get better and we remember that empathy that we feel for each other.
Yes, you got it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jackie.
Thanks. This was great. Have a good day.
You too.